So what happened to Stewie Griffin? How and why did he go from rage-filled, evil baby genius hell-bent on killing his mother to an empathetic, fun-loving, free spirit that is completely antithetical to his original self? Well, 20 years ago in a 3-part season finale, we got a glimpse into the future of the very man Stewie Griffin would become, and it was mostly true. Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Colton Ogburn, and let's take a look back at the character progression of one Stuart Gilligan Griffin, the youngest of Lois and Peter Griffin's children, who, despite being a baby for the last quarter century, has had arguably the most character growth of any of the Family Guy cast. Now, there are 5 episodes of Family Guy that I want to take a look back at so that we can truly understand the moment that Stewie changed. There's season 4's episode 28, 29, and 30, which showed us some true character progression for Stewie and his eventual pivot. But there's also season 6's episode 4 and 5, where the show, in typical Family Guy fashion, acknowledged its own shift in character, not only for Stewie, but for the series as a whole. But before we get into all of that, to better understand this overall character progression for Stewie, we have to go all the way back to 1999 when we first met the Griffins.
How does a boy like that go so wrong?
Well, I live in a crummy neighborhood.
When we first meet Stewie, he is determined for victory to be his.
Yes, well, victory is mine!
He is set on not only global domination, but also the killing of his mother, Lois.
Mark my words, when you least expect it, your uppance will come.
You see, Stewie, he quickly became a pop culture icon. In the early seasons, Stewie's defining characteristic was his obsessive desire to murder Lois, coupled with an elaborate arsenal of high-tech gadgets and weaponry. But as the series continued over the years, Stewie underwent one of the most dramatic character transformations in television history. His murderous tendencies faded, his villainous ambitions softened, and he evolved into a flamboyant, pop culture obsessed, emotionally fragile, and at times even caring character. Now, he's still, of course, a super genius with high-tech gadgets and a major temper, but he's become a far more layered character who really began to find his true self through his friendship with Brian, the Griffin's dog.
But the truth is, you're my only friend, Brian. If I didn't have you, I'd be lost.
So this transformation was not sudden, nor was it the result of a single narrative shift or even some hard reset decision made in the writer's room. It happened organically. It emerged from the combined influence of creative decisions, audience response, changes in comedic style over the years, and the changing priorities really of the show itself. Family Guy, like any show, it didn't want to become stale. It had to grow with the audience and the culture of the world around it to remain relevant, especially since it's such a referential type show.
Oh, you don't know who Joe Pesci is because you're 14. You see, in the 90s, this was a tough guy.
Now, Stewie's arc is one of the clearest examples of how long-running animated series with characters who are frozen in time often reshape their characters to sustain fresh humor, deepen their emotional resonance, and adjust to changing cultural contexts. Understanding why Stewie stopped trying to kill Lois and how he became the Stewie of today requires examining Family Guy's humor and how it's evolved over the years. So, we need to discuss the constraints of serialized storytelling like Family Guy, the dynamics behind the scenes, and the developing relationship in story between Stewie and the rest of the Griffin family, Stewie and Brian especially. So in the earliest seasons of the show, Stewie served as a parody of your standard cartoon villains. His storylines revolved around building death rays in his bedroom, constructing mind control devices, and plotting elaborate schemes against Lois, whom he blamed for his captivity in the Griffin's home. These jokes worked because of their absurdity, which was, and still is, very on theme for Family Guy, albeit what's considered absurd has changed over the years, as audiences have grown more and more used to absurdist humor, a main reason being because of shows like Family Guy and South Park. And this means that the humor has to become more absurd to stay absurd. So early on, Stewie presented himself as a tyrant destined to reshape the world, yet he remained physically helpless and trapped in a high chair and misunderstood by most of the cast, with Brian being the only one that could even understand him.
Look at that, look at that. Now your knight is at refrigerator 5.
Oh yeah, that's real mature.
Not only could Brian understand Stewie speaking, but he understood Stewie as a person. Now, in the beginning, Stewie's fixation on killing Lois, it provided a sense of continuity across the otherwise bottled episodic storytelling that we had come to expect with Family Guy. This type of series relies solely on the characters, not the stories themselves, to have a through line, like a progression episode to episode. Some of those continuing themes were Peter being an idiot, Brian was a smartass, Quagmire's a pervert, Stewie was maniacal. They all had a thing. However, even during these early years, writers began to recognize the limitations of the evil characterization of Stewie. Stewie's persona, while memorable, offered a relatively narrow comedic territory to be explored, and that could become repetitive even for Family Guy.
Will you be prancing then?
Oh, you just want to eat him up.
Each of Stewie's assassination attempts on Lois had to escalate in absurdity, yet always end in failure. Now, repeating the same pattern risked making Stewie predictable, which would be an ironic outcome for a character built on subverting expectations. Now, while the joke had landed and remained fresh in the first 2 seasons, it became increasingly apparent that grounding Stewie solely in this homicidal intent would limit the show's ability to generate fresh material and make this character interesting. A character who pursues only one goal, especially one that cannot be achieved without fundamentally upending the series' entire formula, that leads to an inevitable comedic ceiling. And hey, I want to be clear, as the ScreenCrush crew, I am all for running a repetitive joke or gag into the ground. But if Family Guy wanted to be able to expand on the characters, especially Stewie, something had to change. And the same was true for Peter, Lois, Chris, Meg. The whole cast really had to go through changes. A lot of changes from the characters that they were in the beginning.
The fruition of my deeply laid plans to escape from that cursed ovarian Bastille.
Jeez, what'd you carry a thesaurus around with you?
But let's stick on Stewie. So, as Family Guy progressed, the writers found that Stewie excelled in context existing outside of the villain role. One of the earliest signs of Stewie's shift came from pairing him more frequently with Brian. Brian's own intellectual pretentiousness and admiration for the arts inspired Stewie's own growth as a character and pulled him out of his shell. Stewie and Brian's dynamic opened creative avenues for the writers that they hadn't previously explored. And pivoting Brian from being Peter's sidekick to Stewie's was arguably one of the greatest changes that the show ever made. And it really opened a creative door for Seth MacFarlane, who clearly sees himself in Brian and Stewie the most. His love for music numbers, his own interest in science, atheism, and politics, this duo, they really allowed for Farland to cut loose and have fun. The road trips, the philosophical debates, the musical numbers, and their genuine friendship and ball-busting has outlasted their original roles when the series first began. The chemistry between these two characters became a defining element of the show, and this partnership would have been nearly impossible to sustain had Stewie remained solely a violent, sociopathic, one-trick pony. Now, the more Stewie interacted with Brian, the more the writers discovered comedic potential in Stewie's curiosity and vulnerabilities. So here in a second, I do want to look at technically 3 episodes that really stand out to me as key moments where Stewie changed and the series itself acknowledged that change. And then there are another 2 episodes a little later in the series that put the final nail in the coffin of the old Stewie. But first, really quick, we need to talk about the transition that led to this ultimate change. You see, in the early 2000s, the show was more traditional, yet simultaneously edgy and more reliant on shock humor, making Stewie's murder plots feel right at home. But as the series matured, especially after its revival following the initial cancellation, but it was brought back because DVD sales were really good, and the show had really found its loyal audience, and in doing so, the style of the show shifted. The humor became broader and more self-referential, and more dependent on meta commentary and cultural satire. Stewie's character naturally adjusted to this environment. His high intelligence made him a useful mouthpiece for the more self-aware jokes. His theatricality fit naturally into the show's growing love for musical interludes, and his insecurities gave the writers opportunities to construct stories with unexpected emotional depth. Really, Stewie became more of a reflection of the show's creator, Seth MacFarlane, as I mentioned earlier. Now, the revival of the series following its cancellation really gave the series the green light to go there and tell the stories and make the jokes that they found funny. In numerous interviews and DVD commentaries, Seth MacFarlane has discussed how Stewie's original voice, which was sharper, harsher, and more aristocratic, how it was inspired by actor Rex Harrison.
Rex Harrison was always so funny to me. Why don't I just do that voice and make it the baby.
But over time, as McFarlane aged and his vocal preferences changed, Stewie's voice softened as well, becoming warmer, higher, and more expressive, and so, therefore, the character did as well.
Thank you, Brian. This calls for champagne. Pop.
Now, this vocal evolution influenced how the writers conceived Stewie's personality. A softer voice made it easier to portray him as emotional, anxious, and at times more flamboyant or sensitive. And this also made it harder to sustain the cold, authoritarian effect of the early villain version of the character. Thus, the performance and the character gradually reshaped each other. Now, while this whole transition was very gradual, if we had to pinpoint a single moment in the series where this big shift happened, it's gotta be the 2007 two-part episode Stewie Kills Lois and Lois Kills Stewie. This storyline played out the fantasy that the series had dangled before audiences for years, after having already moved on from the evil Stewie tone. We even see Stewie acknowledge that he had changed and gone soft.
God, he's right. Rupert, I've been all talk.
But before we get into that two-parter from season 6, let's take a look at the 3-part finale from season 4. These episodes explored Stewie's feelings of misplacement in his family, and we see him get excited when he sees this guy on TV that he believes to be his actual true father.
He could be my father. My real father. I knew it.
Now, it is also in these episodes where we see Stewie have a near-death experience, and he decides that he is going to change his evil ways.
Well, from this day forward, Stuart Gilligan Griffin will be a good boy.
So, it turns out that this guy, he isn't Stewie's father, he's Stewie from the future.
Because I'm not your father. I'm you.
In this 3-episode arc, we not only see Stewie go through a near-death experience that changes his outlook on life, we see him going through this experience where he is elated to have found the man that he thinks is his true father, because it obviously can't be Peter. It is. Now, these moments are crucial to showing us Stewie becoming aware of this new true self that he has grown into, both within the story, but in a meta sense as well, as the character has become more of a part of the pop culture zeitgeist. Now, as Stewie spends time with his future self, at first he attempts to correct what he views as a subpar future where he's a loser.
So forget about sending me back, because I'm not leaving until we do a complete overhaul on this sad thing you call our life.
Stewie had a very clear idea of where he saw himself by the time he reached adulthood, and this wasn't it, and Stewie was kind of blaming himself for having gone soft. But as we spent more time with the younger and older Stewie, this was the moment that we saw the character Stewie would become. Stewie's older self was softer, more kind-hearted, free-spirited, and Stewie's time with his future self molded him into the very Stewie that we know today. But it wasn't without some fight. In season 6, we see Stewie take one more crack at going back to his old self and being the Stewie that his season 1 self had always thought he had beat. We see Stewie finally murder Lois. Kind of.
I did it! I killed her! She's dead!
This two-parter shows us exactly what the natural conclusion would have been had the show not pivoted and changed Stewie's character. We see Stewie kill Lois, go full tyrant, take over the world, Lois then returns, and the two have this massive battle of the century at the White House, and Lois ultimately kills Stewie. And then it's all revealed to be a simulation.
I suppose I'm not ready to kill Lois or take over the world. Yet.
These 2 episodes unpacked years of built-up tension that fans had wanted to see, indulging the audience's curiosity about what would happen if Stewie actually succeeded in his early ambitions to kill Lois, but the twist revealed that the events of the 2 episodes never actually happened, really cemented the writer's intention to officially close the book on Stewie's old self, acknowledge the shift in the show and the character, and embrace the new Stewie.
Yes, but theoretically, if someone watched the events of that simulation from start to finish, only to find out that none of it really happened, I mean, you don't think that should be just like a giant middle finger to them?
Now, with that villain arc resolved, the writers increasingly leaned into Stewie's emotional and psychological depth. Episodes began to explore his insecurities about fitting in with other children, his anxieties about the future, his fear of disappointing Brian, and later, his struggles with his own sexual identity.
Say what?
And look, before you at me, I know he's a baby, but Jesus Christ, he's a cartoon character. He's not a baby, okay? So we're gonna talk about the queer coding of Stewie, all right?
Wow, look at how gay we are. I am so gay with my gayness.
It was often used for humor in the show, but there was also this sincerity to it, and it made his character all the more interesting and layered. And of course, it was also funny.
Oh, can you imagine if two dudes did that? I mean, like, would that even exist? Let's type it in and see what comes up.
Now, this emotional evolution and deep dive into Stewie's character does not mean that the show completely abandoned Stewie's darker aspects. Instead, those traits became tools for specific comedic scenarios rather than the foundation of his entire character. Modern Stewie, while different, will still build a weapon or express a violent thought, but these moments now function as jokes that don't bring down the entire character, creating a multi-dimensional character who can withstand more than 2 decades worth of storytelling. Now, while I love me a Peter episode, I always get excited when it's a Brian and Stewie episode, but not a Meg episode.
Hey guys, give her a chance, all right?
Episodes featuring Stewie and Brian trapped together, caring for one another, fighting and insulting each other, but also showing their bond as brothers. These episodes often rank among the series' most acclaimed because they contrast sharply with Family Guy's otherwise cynical tone. Stewie's evolving ability to show compassion or form attachments allows for the show to strike an emotional chord that its satirical humor usually avoids. And without the softening of Stewie Griffin, these moments would be impossible. So while Stewie once saw Lois as his sworn enemy, the writers gradually allowed for them to share sincere moments, and their relationship grew as well. Lois demonstrates genuine affection for Stewie, and he even sometimes reciprocates. That tension between them has cooled into something more akin to comedic sibling rivalry instead of existential warfare. And this shift not only supports Stewie's growth, but it also frees up the character of Lois to be portrayed in more varied roles, and it allows for her character to become more self-aware and not have to be in this constant state of ambivalence.
Oh, Daughtry! I'm a mom, so I love this.
Stewie's transformation shows how long-running shows must adapt in order to survive. Had Stewie remained a one-note villain, he likely would have grown stale after only a few seasons. But instead, by embracing his emotional complexity, Family Guy allowed for him to develop into a character that could change and grow, not physically, but emotionally. And this flexibility ensures that Stewie remains relevant. And while some fans may nostalgically prefer the Stewie of the early seasons, the modern Stewie offers a broader comedic scope, stepping away from the singular goal of killing Lois and having Stewie Griffin become something far more enduring, a character capable of growing and connecting with audiences across generations.
Can I have a hug, Brian? Oh, no, God, no, not now, no. I want a hug!
But hey, let me know, what did you think about Stewie's character progression over the years? And if you're new here, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified every time we upload a new video. For ScreenCrush, I'm Colton Ogburn.